Have you ever watched an AFL game and wondered what every player on the ground does? Well, today we're breaking down every position on the ground to figure out what each player actually is doing when they're running around, so you can understand the sport a bit more like a pro. Welcome to day 3, guys. We're moving on to positions now. Hopefully you have checked out my previous videos where I have explained a bit more of the basics around the rules and everything that's going to get you started to learn the game. Now let's talk about the positions and what each group on the ground is doing to ensure that their team is getting closer to victory. Let's get started. So there are 18 players on the field per team at each time, and these are broken down usually into 3 categories: 6 forwards, 6 midfielders, and 6 defenders, with 5 on the bench where one of the players is a tactical substitute. First, let's break down the forward section. So for the forwards, what's their role? Well, it's pretty easy. They basically just need to kick the goals. For the forwards, their main responsibilities consist of obviously kicking goals, applying pressure on the opposing team's defenders, leading up to receive kicks from the midfielders or the defenders, setting up goals for their teammates, and creating turnovers from the defenders to kick goals themselves. And in a forward line, you'll usually see 3 different types of forwards. You'll see a full forward or a centre half forward, which are usually bigger players because it's their role to get the ball in their hands, and for the full forward usually kick the goal, whereas for the centre half forward it might be to get the ball higher up the ground and move it deeper to the full forward to take the mark. But if they don't mark it, this is when the small forwards or the half forwards come into play and help their big men out. Small forwards are usually small, fast, and they're also a little bit defensive minded because it's up to them to try and pick the pocket of the defenders or of their own full forward to get the ball off the crumb of the pack and snap through a goal. Half forwards are a little bit more different. They're a bit more of a mid-size, and it could be a midfielder that is resting in the forward line. They're kind of like a link between the midfield and the forward group. Their role is to play on the flanks of the forward 50, which is basically on the outside, on the edge of the 50, roaming between the wing and pushing forward deep to kick a goal themselves. But they also have to be reliable for a half-backer that's willing to run off them and go and attack the other way. So they also have to be a little bit defensive-minded as well. But for all the forwards, their main role is to kick goals. Let's move on to the midfielders now. The mid 6. These guys are the workhorses of the team, and they're responsible for winning the ball from the stoppages and linking the defense and the attack to ensure that the team scores highly. They basically run the whole game. These guys usually have to run the most distance throughout the match, up to 15 to 20 kilometers per game of running, and they have to provide offensive and defensive support. So their main responsibilities consist of winning clearances from the stoppage, delivering passes to the forwards, obviously applying pressure and tackling hard, transitioning the ball from defense to offense, and also controlling the tempo of the game, ensuring that adequate score opportunities come up. But there are different types of midfielders. First of all, let's start off with the ruck. The ruck is the tallest player on the ground, and they're the one that's always in the ruck contest when the ball gets thrown up. It's their job to tap the ball out to the other midfielders, and they control the stoppages. Rucks are usually not that versatile because they're quite big, so it's mainly their job to just tap the ball down. But if they're good at marking around the ground as well, that's a bonus, or even go forward. Next we have the on-ballers. These are the guys that start with the ruckman in the middle of the ground after a goal is scored. They're also known as the followers, and they're also known as inside mids. But they all have different names. First there's the ruck rover. Usually it's their responsibility to follow the ruck around the ground and gather the contested hard ball. These guys are a little bit of a taller midfielder. Next you have the rover. The rover is supposed to be fast and agile and a bit more smaller and tough because it's their job to crumb at the stoppages. And by crumbing I mean getting the ball that's been tapped by the ruckman, or if the ruck rover hasn't got their hands on the ball. These guys aren't scared of getting hit, and they love a good tackle as well. And next you have the center. And the center is the main distributor for the whole team. They're usually the one that wins the ball at the stoppages and gets it out to the wings. Now these guys start on the edge of the center square on opposite sides of the ground, and it's their job to run up and down the whole field throughout the game, providing for the offense and the defense. These guys are usually running really high kilometers as well, up to 15 to 20 kilometers. And it's their job to try and get the ball from the defense down to the offense. It's a really tough role. These guys are usually a little bit more faster and love to create space where there's not many players and provide link-up play from the on-ballers. Now let's move on to the back 6, also known as the defenders. And it's quite simple what their job is. It's to basically stop the opposition by intercepting or punching the ball away from them. These guys protect their goal, and they are also responsible for setting up counter attacks to the midfields and the forwards. Their main responsibilities consist of obviously obviously preventing the opposition forwards from marking or scoring, intercepting passes and providing rebound play from the backline, and tackling opponents to force turnovers or stoppages. But again, there are different types of defenders, and not all defenders' primary role is to actually defend. First, we have the key defenders, mainly the fullback and the centre halfback. The fullback plays on the opposition's full forward, and it's their job to stop the main goal scoring threat, whereas the centre halfback is playing on the opposition's centre half forward, and they're the ones trying to intercept and launch counterattacks. These guys need to be big and strong. Next, we have the small defenders, or the back pockets, and these guys play on the small forwards or the forward pockets, and obviously it's their job to stop the small crumbing fast forwards to try and snap a goal over their head. So their main job is to shut down these players. It can be a little bit unrewarding, but without these guys, teams would not win premierships. And next we have the half-backers. For these guys, their main job in the modern game is to not always defend. They can actually be very responsible for setting up teams' attacks, because these guys are good at rebounding from the back line and transitioning the ball up to the midfield or the forward line. They can run off their man because the forwards are likely to think that they need to defend them, but the defenders are looking to actually get away from them and set up their own team's attack. It's a really risky position, but if you can get a good balance between defense and offense, then you'll be a really good halfback. And hopefully they can get the ball long into the forward line and create a goal of their own, as well as stopping them. Now we've got the bench. The role of the bench is to provide fresh legs into the team, as they can come onto the ground and off the ground at any time. Any player can go on the bench at any time, and usually the best players go on the bench for a short period of time to regain some fresh air and get their breath back. Sometimes they might even start on the bench at the start of the games themselves, because it is quite hybrid now. Players can start off the bench, even if they are a good player, and come and rotate off the ground with other players. Teams have 75 interchanges to use throughout the 4 quarters of the match, with up to 20 rotations being done in 1 quarter, as players usually come off for a 4 to 5 minute break before coming back on. Their main responsibilities consist of providing fresh energy to the team, obviously replacing a tired or injured player, and playing a specific or key role that the coach asks them to, such as a tag, which follows one of the best players from the opposite team around, and ensuring that they don't get a lot of the ball by running very tight with them. So there are 4 players on the interchange bench and 1 tactical substitute, which can be used at any time but only activated once throughout the game. For example, teams may choose to hold on to use their substitute until the 4th quarter to provide a point of difference for a player that isn't particularly playing well and he comes off and cannot come back on, where this substitute is introduced to the interchange bench and can then rotate to the on-field throughout the rest of the game. However, it's critical to get the timing of these substitutes right. For some teams, they might choose to activate their substitute at halftime if they see that they need to make a structural change to their team, taking out a taller player and bringing a smaller, faster one in. However, if they do activate their sub too early, and then after this they have a player that is injured and can no longer continue in the game, then they are then a man down, because they would have then activated their substitute, leaving a fresh player unable to be playing the rest of the game and an injured player unable to be played the rest of the game. So then they would only be down to 3 interchange players on the bench. Some teams even get down to 2 or 1 if they get multiple injuries in one game. This is where the use of a good bench comes in handy. If you can get a fit and firing bench, this could be the difference to winning a game. Because if you have 4, or even that extra player being a fresh one, compared to another team's 1 or 2, players that are on the ground are going to get more tired for the opposite team because they can't come off as much, whereas the other ones have the opportunity to do so. So this is why the bench is also a critical part of the team. And that's it. That's all the positions broken down for you in a simple way. Which position do you think you would play the best? I know what I think is the most difficult position to play, but let me know in the comments what you think, and if there's any in particular that make you excited. And that's it for day 3, guys. I hope you've enjoyed. Make sure to go and check out all my other content through the link in my bio. I've got a TikTok, Instagram, Facebook all going, as well as my Pinterest community. So check out things on there if you are interested to learn more about the sport, and tune in for day 4 and beyond, guys. Hope you've enjoyed, and let's roll on to tomorrow. Let's go.